These ominous rumbling sounds, the ground shaking under your feet? Wait a minute, that's my tummy. Or it might be Washington State's Mount Adams waking up. It's the largest volcano in the state by both area and volume, and it's recently started to show signs of life after staying silent for thousands of years. Scientists have noticed an alarming uptick in seismic activity around the mountain. And since the last eruption here happened between 3,800 and 7,600 years ago, humanity was still in the Stone Age at that time. This sudden chattiness has scientists, let's say, curious. The U.S. Geological Survey has hurriedly installed temporary seismic stations around Mount Adams to keep an eye on the situation. At the same time, they reassure the public there's no need to panic. Mount Adams doesn't reach the height of the better-known Mount Rainier, and still it covers a massive area, making it Washington's largest active volcano. Interestingly, records show that before September of this year, Mount Adams had experienced an average of just one small earthquake every 2 to 3 years since 1982. And then, the Cascades Volcano Observatory and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network detected a staggering 6 earthquakes in just 1 month, September. These quakes were all rather tiny, with magnitudes ranging between 0.9 and 2 on the Richter scale. It means they were so weak you wouldn't feel them at the surface. Plus, satellite imagery confirmed there was no ground deformation in the area. Now, at the moment, the USGS keeps Mount Adams' alert level at green or normal, so we shouldn't worry about the ground opening and swallowing towns and cities. But the most recent seismic blips have encouraged the agency to install additional equipment for more precise monitoring. Such an expanded network will help scientists notice even the smallest earthquakes, which will help them understand what's happening under Mount Adams. This extra equipment might also shed light on whether this recent activity is a signal of future eruptions or just a random anomaly. If Mount Adams eventually erupted, it would likely produce slow-moving lava flows rather than explosive eruptions like Mount St. Helens. After all, past eruptions have only led to lava flows that travel just a few miles from the volcano, so that's not what we'd need to worry about. A much more dangerous thing would be lahars. These are mud flows that can happen when volcanic ash, rock, and melted ice mix during eruptions. Lahars have occurred near Mount Adams without even eruptions. Rock, weakened by hydrothermal processes at the volcano's summit, suddenly broke loose, creating fast-moving, destructive mud flows. Exactly for this reason, the USGS categorizes Mount Adams as a high-threat volcano. While it doesn't erupt frequently, it still poses serious risks to nearby settlements. Another volcano we should carefully watch is Katla in Iceland. It's one of the country's most powerful and dangerous volcanoes. It last erupted over a century ago in 1918, but if it erupts again, it could be 10 times as powerful as another Icelandic volcano whose name I can't pronounce. See? That one erupted in 2010, completely disrupting air travel all over Europe. An eruption of Katla could release large amounts of sulfur dioxide, which could form sulfate aerosols in the atmosphere. Such aerosols reflect sunlight, which could even cause temporary global cooling. This phenomenon often followed catastrophic volcanic eruptions in the past. Although eruptions are common in Iceland, Katla's ash cloud would likely shoot higher into the sky and cover larger areas of Europe than that other one did. It would ground flights and negatively affect economies. If Katla erupted, it would also harm agriculture, water supplies, and air quality. In 2014, scientists noted that a large eruption could even cause a tsunami that might travel along Iceland's south coast and out to sea. But the potential impact of such a tsunami is still unclear. Katla tends to erupt on a regular schedule every 40 to 80 years, which means that another eruption is statistically very likely soon. That's why Katla remains under close scientific observation. The Canary Islands' Cumbre Vieja erupted recently in 2021, reminding people of its destructive potential. The lava flow from this eruption was devastating. It covered whole neighborhoods and flowed into the ocean, destroying more than 3,000 homes. Thousands of people had to be evacuated. But the craziest thing? Even though the damage was significant, Scientists believe it could have been far worse. A massive eruption of Cumbre Vieja could have caused the volcano's entire western flank to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean, triggering a mega tsunami. This hypothetical tsunami could have potentially created waves hundreds or even thousands of feet high. They could have flooded coastlines around the Atlantic basin, including parts of the US and Europe. Luckily, recent studies claim that a collapse of that scale is unlikely. But even though the chance of a mega tsunami is low, scientists still think it's wise to prepare for possible eruptions because there's a chance of extensive damage. The lava flows that occur at this volcano tend to be extensive and dangerous to both human life and the infrastructure on the island. If you decide to travel to Ecuador, you should be wary of Cotopaxi, one of the most active volcanoes in this country. It's been rumbling with minor eruptions since 2022. While these eruptions have been relatively small, Cotopaxi has a great potential for a major eruption, and it has scientists on high alert. If Cotopaxi erupted on a large scale, it could produce a massive ash cloud over 12 miles high, threatening the lives of around 200,000 people in the neighboring area. A serious danger is Cotopaxi's snow-capped summit. It would melt super rapidly in a major eruption. It could lead to destructive floods and landslides that would flow down the mountain and potentially reach populated areas. This combination of volcanic activity and glacial floods makes Cotopaxi a high-risk volcano. A powerful eruption could occur soon, or it could be years or even decades away. But monitoring efforts are in place to catch any warning signs. The next volcano we should watch out for is already infamous, Mount Vesuvius. Its catastrophic eruption in 79 CE destroyed the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Its last eruption occurred in 1944, but Vesuvius remains highly active and poses a great risk to nearby Naples, one of Italy's largest cities. A large eruption would threaten over 3 million people. Many of them live in the vicinity or even directly on the slopes of the volcano. If Vesuvius erupted, it would be an explosive event, with ash, rocks, and volcanic gas ejected at extremely high speeds. And even though such a destructive event isn't expected for a few hundred years, Vesuvius remains one of the world's most closely watched volcanoes. After all, it has a real potential to cause catastrophic damage in a densely populated area. Then we have Popocatépetl, often called El Popo. It's one of North America's tallest active volcanoes, which lies about 40 miles from Mexico City. Exactly this proximity to a metropolitan area with a population of 22 million people makes Popocatépetl especially hazardous. A large eruption could send a massive ash cloud over Mexico City, causing widespread disruptions. Ash could clog the city's drainage systems, contaminate water supplies, and even cause power outages by short-circuiting electrical systems. Plus, lahars could rush down the volcano, reaching nearby towns. Popocatépetl has been showing near-constant seismic activity since the early 2000s, and smaller eruptions are pretty common here. In early 2024, there were 13 recorded minor eruptions, which alarmed nearby towns. At the same time, volcanologists consider such eruptions normal for Popocatépetl. While talking about super dangerous volcanoes, we can't skip Yellowstone National Park. It houses one of the world's largest supervolcanoes. Its last massive eruption occurred about 640,000 years ago. But if this monster were to erupt today, the impact would be much more devastating for the entire planet. States closest to Yellowstone, including Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, would be most affected, likely experiencing disastrous pyroclastic flows. These flows, which are made of a dangerous mix of lava, ash, and gases, can obliterate everything in their path. Large parts of the country would also be blanketed in volcanic ash, over 3 feet in some areas. On a global scale, an eruption at Yellowstone would send tons of ash and gases into the stratosphere, potentially blocking sunlight and causing global temperatures to drop for a few years. This would disrupt agriculture, collapse transportation systems, and create food shortages on a massive scale. Still, even though there's a popular myth that Yellowstone is overdue for an eruption, geologists clarify that this isn't true. Volcanoes don't follow precise timetables, and the activity at Yellowstone doesn't indicate an imminent eruption. So yeah, that's good news.
Phew, you can finally send that last report for the day and breathe out. The weekend is around the corner. But just when you're about to hit send, you're alarmed by the low rumbling under your desk. Is it the light rail passing by? Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's a volcano speaking. What, here? In Arizona? That's right, the ground keeps shifting under Arizona, reminding us that Earth is alive. No panic though, let's arm ourselves with some context. 20 American states have extinct, active, and dormant, currently sleeping, volcanoes. Among such states, you can find California, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. On the bright side, Arizona's volcanoes are dormant at the moment, but it doesn't mean they won't go off in the near or not so near future. Now, how about traveling to Arizona to check the traces of its active volcanic past? They dot the desert landscapes of this state like spots dot a Dalmatian. There are entire volcanic fields southwest of Phoenix, east of Douglas, near Flagstaff, north of Kingman, and near the Mexico border. The most worrying thing about these fields is that even though they're not active at the moment, eruptions in this region might happen every 1,000 years or so. Well, the time seems to be up. The last powerful and destructive volcanic eruption occurred around 1,000 years ago at the Sunset Crater. Oh, this place is worth paying more attention to. And we will, but a bit later. First, we have to talk about hotspots. No, not that place where you can surf the web. In our volcanic context, a hotspot is a place where insane amounts of heat melt the overlying crust, Earth's thin outer layer, and form volcanoes. This heat rises from the mantle, which is located between our planet's dense, superheated core and the crust. Want to see an example of this type of volcanism? Welcome to the Hawaiian Islands. The Big Island has its active volcanoes because, at the moment, it's situated on top of the Hawaiian hotspot. The older Hawaiian Islands were once there too, but later they drifted off towards the northwest. It happened because that's where the oceanic crust on top of which they sat, namely the Pacific Plate, moved. Now, look at the world's ocean basins. Yes, they're literally dotted with islands that sit on top of hotspots, like Hawaii, Iceland, Samoa, the Galapagos. Those are probably the most famous examples. But don't think that continents can't host hotspots. They can, but those are far less common. One of the most famous continental hotspots is, I bet you know it. Yep, the one beneath the Yellowstone caldera. By the way, the caldera is a vast volcanic crater, especially one formed as a result of a massive eruption that led to the collapse of the mouth of a volcano. The Yellowstone hotspot is basically the creator of Old Faithful and the rest of the hot springs and mud pots for which the national park is famous. Speaking of Old Faithful, let's make a small detour and pay more attention to this wonder of nature. It's one of the most well-known geysers in the world. People have been coming from all over the globe to see it for more than a century. The cool thing about this geyser is that the likes of it can only form under very specific conditions. That's why they're pretty rare. Magma under the surface superheats pockets of underground water. The pressure there keeps growing until it eventually pushes the water upward with immense strength. A certain volcanic rock with a high silica content lines the tunnel through which this water escapes. Basically, it creates a unique pipe that can withstand unbelievable pressure and heat created by the water erupting above the ground. Old Faithful was the very first named geyser in Yellowstone. If you come to visit it expecting the thing to erupt every hour on the hour, you're gonna be disappointed. On average, Old Faithful erupts every 91 minutes or so, which isn't that bad either. Plus, you can download a special app which will provide you with the approximate time of the next eruption. But be very careful while visiting and stay away from the site. The water erupting from the powerful geyser reaches 204 degrees Fahrenheit. The steam is even more scorching, up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's hot enough to bake a cake. But let's get back to our volcanic hotspots. Scientists still don't clearly understand why there aren't many hotspot volcanoes on continental crust. One reason might be that the continental crust is much thicker than the oceanic crust, which is about 4 times as thick on average. Another reason could be that most of Earth's crust, about 2/3 of it, is oceanic. This means that there's less continental crust for hotspots to form under. Now, I bet those of you living in Arizona will appreciate the following info. We'll talk about a volcanic field right in the heart of this state, the San Francisco Volcanic Field. That's a massive area filled with over 600 volcanoes. Yes, they're mostly small, but it doesn't make them any less impressive. They're scattered across 1,800 square miles in northern Arizona, a giant territory. Interestingly, scientists are still debating about whether this volcanic field is actually sitting on top of a hotspot. But one thing they agree upon, the volcanoes in this area get younger as you move east. And this pattern matches up with the North American plate moving west over what could be a stationary hotspot beneath the surface of our planet. Cool, huh? The volcanic hullabaloo in that area started around 6 million years ago. So, in geological terms, it's relatively young. As for the most recent eruption, it happened less than 1,000 years ago. The Sunset Crater, which I mentioned before, the one near Flagstaff, is the most famous vent from that eruption. The Sinagua people had to leave their homes at Wupatki Pueblo because of the eruption. That site is now part of the Wupatki National Monument. There, you can see how people lived in this volcanic region many years ago. If you go to explore this area, you'll notice that most of the volcanoes there are basalt cinder cones, small and steep. The Colorado Plateau has quite dry weather conditions. That's why the volcanoes haven't worn down much. Some of the best examples of those cones, like this one, called the SP crater, still look like they appeared yesterday. But look around. It's not just cinder cones. The San Francisco Volcanic Field also has a stratovolcano, as well as some lava domes that formed from volcanic rocks with more silica than basalt you can find in places like Hawaii. It means they're thicker and don't flow as easily. Anyway, the stratovolcano is going to be one of the most epic sights you'll come across while exploring this volcanic field. Well, not the stratovolcano itself, but the San Francisco peaks, the remains of that giant formation. They stand tall at more than 12,600 feet. That's 4.5 Burj Khalifas placed on top of one another. It makes the peaks some of the biggest landmarks in northern Arizona. They're not only stunning, but also sacred to the Native American people who have lived in the area for many generations. Now, unlike those super active volcanoes in Hawaii, the San Francisco Volcanic Field takes its time, thousands of years between eruptions. But you shouldn't relax just yet. Geologists say another eruption is likely to happen one day. It will probably occur in the remote eastern part of the field, away from big towns. Phew! And if that next eruption is anything like the one that formed Sunset Crater, it would be quite the show. Lava fountains and rivers of lava flowing. At the same time, the next eruption might not happen for centuries, maybe even millennia. Until then, the San Francisco Volcanic Field will remain a hidden gem of volcanic history, waiting for its next fiery performance. The last time this volcano erupted was about 500 years ago, but recently, small tremors have grown really frequent, to such an extent that scientists have been recording more than 1,000 a month. I'm talking about the Campi Flegrei supervolcano in Italy. At one point, just a few weeks ago, the area was rattled by a 4.4 magnitude earthquake with 150 tremors in just one night. It was the strongest earthquake in over 40 years. A lot of locals spent the night in their cars, but in the morning, the shakes were followed by another earthquake, a bit weaker with a magnitude of 3.6. So, is Italy in danger? Well, the quake itself wasn't big enough to cause serious damage, but it evoked a lot of panic. At the moment, local authorities are working on grandiose emergency plans. If worse comes to worse, they'll have to evacuate hundreds of thousands of people. One of the reasons is the proximity of this area to Naples with more than 3 million inhabitants. At the moment, they're even considering an option of paying people to leave their homes. Right now, schools remain closed in the Campi Flegrei area. The authorities are allocating more than 500 million euros to ensure the safety of buildings and constructions in the area. A yellow alert is still in place in the region where 80,000 people live. There's the so-called red zone, which is the most dangerous area. There are 1,250 houses in this red zone, and all of them will be at high seismic risk if an eruption begins. Plus, more than twice as many will be at medium risk. Italy is a country prone to seismic activity, and Pozzuoli is a densely populated area that is located on one of the most dangerous supervolcanoes in Europe. Campi Flegrei has 24 hidden underground craters and dwarfs the better-known Vesuvius. Yes, the very volcano that wiped the ancient Roman city of Pompeii off the face of the earth in 79 CE. This city thrived near the base of Mount Vesuvius at the Bay of Naples. In the time of the early Roman Empire, 20,000 people lived in Pompeii. They were merchants, manufacturers, farmers, and others. The soil in the region was rich and fertile, so there were lots of orchards and vineyards. Strangely, no one knew that this black earth was the legacy of an earlier eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The area was a favorite summer destination for rich Romans. Sadly, at noon on August 24, 79 CE, all this prosperity came to an end. The peak of Mount Vesuvius exploded, sending a 10-mile-high mushroom cloud of ash and pumice into the stratosphere. For the next 12 hours, the eruption was wreaking havoc on the city. Volcanic ash and a hail of pumice stones, some of which were 3 inches in diameter, showered Pompeii. It forced the city's occupants to flee in terror. Around 2,000 people holed up in stone structures and cellars, paralyzed by fear. They hoped to wait out the eruption. Who knows? Maybe if they had decided to leave the city immediately after the beginning of the eruption, they would have had some chances to survive. A westerly wind protected the city from the first stages of the eruption. But soon, a giant cloud of hot ash and gas rushed down the western slope of Vesuvius. It engulfed the city, burning everything in its way. This disastrous cloud was followed by a flood of volcanic mud and rock, which completely buried the city. As if the volcano was making sure no one would survive, a cloud of toxic gas poured onto the city, finishing the lives of a few survivors on August 25th. A flow of rock and ash followed. It collapsed roofs and walls and turned the city into a giant cemetery. When a supervolcano erupts, the consequences are usually catastrophic. Supervolcanoes have at least once had an eruption with a volcanic explosivity index of 8, which is the largest recorded number on the index. Supervolcanoes are often extremely large, with no cone at all. That's because they're typically the remains of gigantic magma chambers that once flared up, leaving behind a caldera. They're usually located over hotspots and appear when huge volumes of magma are trying to escape from deep underground. Eventually, they burst through Earth's surface. Sometimes, all this magma gets stuck, unable to break through the planet's crust. And then, massive pools of pressurized magma gather at a depth of several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. At one point, a super eruption goes off. The most recent super eruption happened in New Zealand. Well, when I say recent, I meant around 26,500 years ago. That's when a supervolcano beneath the surface of Lake Taupo spewed into the air more than 300 cubic miles of ash and pumice. Imagine 500,000 Great Pyramids of Giza flying up into the air at the same time. That's how incredibly powerful that eruption was. But the most exciting and confusing thing about the eruption was that the Taupo volcano didn't simply go off like many others. At first, everything was going as usual. Tons and tons of pressurized magma had built up under the surface, and the pressure was getting higher and higher. But after the rock cracked and the first portion of lava rushed out of the crater, something went wrong, and the supervolcano took a break. Only several months later, the disastrous eruption shook the ground. Thousands of tons of lava, rocks, and ash flew high into the atmosphere. The unusual pattern of Taupo still confuses scientists. The Indonesian eruption at Toba caldera 75,000 years ago was the largest eruption in the last 2 million years. Experts estimate that the eruption could have released hundreds of thousands of tons of sulfuric acid, which might have even caused a several-degree cooling of the planet's surface. But nowadays, the impact is hard to detect because of glaciers that covered the ground afterward. There are also several so-called supervolcanoes that haven't lived up to this name yet because they've never produced any super eruptions. For example, in 1883, Indonesian volcano Krakatoa went off. The power of the eruption tore the volcano's walls open, and cold seawater rushed into its molten insides. The difference in temperatures made the volcano blow up with a deafening boom. It was clearly heard 3,000 miles away in Australia. It earned the blast the title of the loudest sound in history. But even though the consequences of this event were truly catastrophic, it still turned out not powerful enough to be called a super eruption. It only had a volcanic explosivity index of 6. Then, there's also Mauna Loa. It's a shield volcano, which means it won't produce explosive eruptions, but its sheer size makes this monster of a volcano extremely dangerous. At the moment, the volcano seems to be at peace with its surroundings. Research equipment doesn't show any signs of activity on Mauna Loa, but if Mauna Loa did suddenly erupt, lava flows could reach the ocean and the most populated and touristy places like Captain Cook very fast, in a matter of hours. The last time the volcano erupted, lava got as far as the outskirts of Hilo on the other side of the island. That's where the University of Hawaii is located. Luckily, people had a few weeks' warning to get ready for the disaster. Over its recorded history, Mauna Loa has been erupting pretty regularly, almost every 6 years. On the bright side, big island volcanoes including Mauna Loa aren't really very volatile. That's because they're shield volcanoes. These volcanoes got such a name because they aren't really very high and resemble a warrior's shield placed flat on the ground. Shield volcanoes are formed by very fluid lava. It travels way farther and forms much thinner flows than the lava erupted from a stratovolcano, which is conically shaped and tall, like the infamous Krakatoa in Indonesia. So, if Mauna Loa erupts, there probably won't be ash clouds or tons of debris. The most dangerous thing will be lava. Since Mauna Loa is a shield volcano, its lava is extremely fluid and voluminous, which allows it to flow far and fast.
Brighter green plants might give us a warning when a volcano is stirring. Turns out, unlike earthquakes, which are super unpredictable, volcanoes can sometimes show early signs. Plants growing around volcanoes look healthier when volcanic activity ramps up because they thrive on increased carbon dioxide levels, a gas that volcanoes emit during eruptions and through underground magma. They also turn browner when the volcanic activity peaks, likely due to harmful gases and heat harming the vegetation. Scientists use satellites to figure this all out. They analyzed satellite data spanning from 1984 to 2022. Future changes might be tracked through satellite imagery as well. Now, this isn't easy to measure directly, especially when volcanoes are tucked away in hard-to-reach, lush areas, such as Taal Volcano in the Philippines and Mount Etna in Italy, This way, plants could give us a heads up about volcanic eruptions years before they happen. With this new weird method, we could save nearby communities by enhancing safety measures, minimizing property damage, and improving evacuation plans. Volcanoes and plants are often tied in mysterious ways. For example, volcanic eruptions in Krakatoa, Indonesia, gave a surprising boost to saguaro cacti in Arizona's Sonora Desert, even though they're thousands of miles away. When the infamous Krakatoa volcano erupted in the 19th century, it sent shockwaves around the world and suddenly helped nurture a generation of saguaros. These incredible cacti can be up to 40 feet tall as adults, but they start life as tiny seedlings that struggle to survive in the desert's harsh conditions. However, thanks to the cooler and wetter conditions caused by volcanic eruptions like Krakatoa, they can get unbelievable growth spurts. Chillier summers and milder winters that follow such eruptions create perfect conditions for young saguaro, which usually don't make it due to extreme heat and cold. But volcanoes not only influence plants, they're also Earth's jewelry makers. Deep beneath the surface, in the fiery heart of a volcano, conditions are just right to form dazzling gems. When volcanoes erupt, they can bring these treasures up to the surface. One of the most famous gems created by volcanic activity is the diamond. They're usually found in a rare type of volcanic rock called kimberlite, which forms deep within the Earth under extreme pressure and temperature. Millions of years ago, kimberlite eruptions, small but powerful volcanic events, hauled diamonds from deep within the Earth. This created sources for many of today's diamond mines. Now, these eruptions didn't happen just anywhere, but originated from the stable hearts of continents, known as cratons. They were bursting forth from as deep as 75 miles underground. Fueled by a mix of carbon dioxide and water, they were like natural rockets, blasting through the Earth to form carrot-shaped channels filled with diamond-laden rocks. Recently, scientists have delved into why these eruptions happen. They suggested that the breakup of ancient supercontinents like Pangaea disrupted the mantle's flow underneath, triggering these spectacular kimberlite eruptions. When a volcano that hosts kimberlite erupts, it can propel these precious stones toward the surface, where we eventually find them. There are other gems that can be found in solidified lava, like peridot, a bright green stone that forms in the molten rock of the upper mantle and is brought to the surface by volcanic activity. There's also obsidian, a shiny glass-like rock that forms when lava cools rapidly. And then there are some insane rocks, like the ones that can hold water in them, even in lava. The deeper we dive in volcanoes, the rarer are the gems we can find. If we dive into the thick layer known as the mantle, we might find olivine, a resilient, pretty green mineral that makes up about half of this layer. It loves high temperatures and happily forms in lava, eventually crystallizing into the igneous rocks we find scattered across the Earth's surface thanks to volcanic eruptions. As olivine cools, it starts to crystallize. Sometimes these crystals are tiny, but other times they grow large and can be polished into beautiful gemstones used in jewelry or industrial processes like metal casing. But as we venture deeper, about 250 miles down, olivine undergoes a fascinating transformation. Here we encountered the layer that's called the transition zone. In the transition zone, the pressure is intense and the heat is on the rise. In this place, olivine morphs into exotic materials like wadleysite and ringwoodite. They show a lovely blue-green hue and a glossy sheen. While they're too rare and small for jewelry, they have a unique ability to hold water within their structures, not as droplets, but as hydrogen and oxygen components, making up to 3% of their volume. Later, it turned out that the transition zone is not just a pressure cooker for minerals, it's a giant sponge, holding a vast underground water reservoir. This was a groundbreaking discovery. You get the pun? This hidden water doesn't form an ocean as we know it, but suggests vast amounts of water are stored deep within the Earth. Volcanoes can help us learn more about life not only on our planet, but on others as well. In the fiery heart of Costa Rica's Poas volcano lies Laguna Caliente. This hydrothermal crater lake is among the most brutal environments on Earth. We've got a whole bunch here: scalding temperatures, toxic minerals, and water so acidic it can corrode metal. But despite all that, there's a few tough microorganisms that manage to thrive in these conditions. And this remarkable survival has caught the attention of scientists because it might just hold clues about life on Mars. Scientists are studying these extreme microbes. Turns out they've developed a myriad of genetic adaptations to withstand their harsh surroundings. They have genes that help them process everything, from sulfur and iron to carbon and bioplastic granules. All these things could be crucial in environments as challenging as Mars. NASA's Perseverance rover is currently exploring the crater rim of Jezero crater on Mars. Previously, we looked for Martian life signs in places like old stream beds and river deltas. However, the discovery of Laguna Caliente suggests that we should probably look for life in the remnants of ancient Martian hot springs as well. These spots might have once had the right cocktail of heat, water, and energy sources that are thought to be essential for kickstarting biology. Volcanoes can help planets in many ways, but they can also destroy life. Scientists believe that volcanic activity was one of the main reasons for at least 3 of Earth's 5 mass extinctions. Take the mass extinction of dinosaurs. We're used to blaming it on the Chicxulub meteorite, but there's a chance it could have been caused by volcanoes. The consequences of the eruptions can be horrifying. Mount Tambora, located on the Indonesian island of Sumbawa, erupted in 1815 and was the most powerful eruption ever recorded in history. This massive eruption was so strong it ejected between 8 to 11 cubic miles of material. It was so loud that the sounds of the eruption were heard as far away as Sumatra, over 1,600 miles distant. Before its catastrophic eruption, Tambora had been dormant for centuries, and its magma chamber slowly cooled and crystallized. This process built up immense pressure inside the volcano. It was eventually released in a series of terrifying events starting on April 5, 1815. The climax came on April 10th, when massive plumes of ash and pumice were thrown into the atmosphere. The aftermath of the eruption was dire. Tsunamis devastated the surrounding area. It's estimated that around 4,600 people passed away immediately from the eruption itself, with ash fallouts affecting air quality and water sources across the region. This event came down in history as the year without a summer. This was due to the vast amount of sulfur dioxide Tambora ejected into the stratosphere. It created a veil of aerosols that reflected sunlight and significantly lowered global temperatures. A similar thing happened to our planet 66 million years ago, during the dinosaur extinction. The sky turned black for months. I mean, I wasn't there, but that's what they say. When we think of active volcanoes, one region comes to mind: the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. 3/4 of Earth's volcanoes sit within this belt. Compare the area to Australia, which doesn't have any volcanic activity. The old continent of Europe is also calm, or at least we like to think so. Can you guess what the most active volcano in Europe is? If you thought of Mount Etna on the island of Sicily in Italy, you were right. The volcano has erupted about 200 times and has been far from sleeping in recent decades. The last time this happened was in August 2023. The highest mountain in the Mediterranean is 500 million years old. But in Iceland, there is a much younger volcano. It sprang into action on the 10th of July 2023. In the afternoon, 3 fissures appeared in the ground on a peninsula in the southwest of the island. This was at a base of a small mountain peak. Its name means Little Ram in the local language. The volcano spewed molten lava high into the air. There were also gas plumes in the area. But the scientific community wasn't surprised by the event. They already knew about the volcanic area that stretches between the cities of Reykjavik and Keflavik. Its name is hard to pronounce. Hey, I want to buy a vowel. It had already erupted during the previous 2 summers. This activity came after 8 centuries of dormancy. In the days leading up to the latest eruption, seismologists, the scientists who study earthquakes, recorded over 12,000 tremors. When the ground opened up in July, the fissures were over 1.5 miles long. The following morning, 2 of them closed. All the lava was now coming out of the last fissure. It grew into an elongated cone, the simplest shape of volcano we are all familiar with. The lava soon filled a large crater. It grew almost 100 feet tall during the first week, and it is still growing. On the night when the eruption started, lava spread out in all directions. Its cinders set ablaze the dry moss in the vicinity. Local authorities closed off the surrounding area. There were toxic gases from the volcanoes and smoke from the burning moss. Firefighters flocked to the area. After a week, they proclaimed the area safe. Visitors soon came to witness the birth of Europe's youngest volcano. This form of tourism is quite developed in Iceland. People come from all over the world to watch active volcanoes. The land of fire and ice is home to more than 130 volcanoes. Some 30 of them are active. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Is volcano tourism safe? In Iceland, it is. The country's authorities research and constantly monitor all of the hotspots. The island is dotted with several dozen seismic stations. These help researchers accurately predict future eruptions, and emergency services are accustomed to these sorts of events. They can quickly cordon off danger zones. This is what happened in 2010. A volcano in the south of the island, the name of which everyone struggled to pronounce, erupted. It spewed out a plume of steam and ash that was 7 miles high. This wasn't a fun time to be an air traveler. Winds carried the enormous plume southeast toward northern Europe. Many countries closed their airspace for several days for safety reasons. The volcano erupted in March, but the Earth was shaking from January the same year, so seismologists knew that an eruption was approaching. When it comes to the continent's youngest volcano, the tourist infrastructure is already there. Visitors can leave their cars at a designated parking lot. Then they go on a 5-hour-long trek. This leads to a viewing deck. Tourists are so close to the epicenter that they can feel the heat haze from the crater. The sight is the most impressive at nighttime. Safety is never a concern. Scientists regularly chart out hazard maps that outline the borders of lava fields. This way, visitors who stick by the rules are never in harm's way. More than a week after the eruption started, a section of the crater collapsed. Lava flowed downhill west of the volcano. This majestic smoldering hot river is slow-moving lava. Scientists categorize it as an AA type. The term is Hawaiian. It describes basaltic lava that has a rough and brittle surface. The flow is composed of broken lava blocks that are called clinkers. They fall off as the substance flows. This reveals red-hot areas. The cooler sections of lava are gray and black in color. When it moves forward, it produces a distinctive sound like shattering glass. Nearly a month after the eruption of the new volcano, we got aerial footage of an interesting phenomenon. A tornado formed directly over the lava flow. This occurs due to the high temperatures in the area. When the conditions are right, a column of heated air can easily turn into a mini tornado. Scientists observed a similar event happen during the 2018 eruption of Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. The lava fields of Europe's second-largest island tell the story of the creation of Iceland. It sits above the place where the North American and Eurasian plates meet each other. Tectonic plates are huge, rocky chunks of Earth's most outer layer. There are roughly 20 of them. They rest on a partially molten layer of rock. All the lava we see on the surface starts its journey here. You could say that these plates float on molten rock. Their boundaries are unstable, so when two plates grind past each other, they release tremendous amounts of energy. The formation of volcanoes is one result. These are places where the molten rock travels upward to the surface. Iceland began to form some 60 million years ago. The tectonic plates under the ocean drifted apart. Enough lava piled up on the surface to create solid ground. This ancient rock is under the waves today. As new lava reaches the surface and cools down, it pushes the old rock away from the center of the island. That's why the oldest parts of Iceland aren't 60, but only 16 million years old. The country's active lava fields are young in geological terms. Some of them are under 1,000 years old. Scientists consider the island a hot spot for volcanoes, pun intended. Nearly a third of the basaltic lava that reaches the Earth's surface in recorded history came from Icelandic eruptions. Fissure swarms, like the ones before the 2023 eruption, cover 30% of the Nordic country. For this reason, only a quarter of the island is inhabited. Norse Vikings were the first people to settle in Iceland at the beginning of the 10th century. Nature threw them a loud welcoming party. Just a few years after their arrival, they witnessed one of the greatest volcanic eruptions in history. Vikings came from a region without volcanoes, so they had no clue as to what was going on. Today, Icelanders are used to such events. This is good because their homeland is entering a new era of volcanic activity. Volcanologists suspect that recent events are an introduction to decades of more frequent eruptions. The peninsula that is home to Earth's youngest volcano is just 17 miles southwest of Iceland's capital city. It's been dormant for a long time. Present-day eruptions there are a reminder that the natural processes that created Iceland are still ongoing. Recently, scientists discovered that there's a historical link between volcanic eruptions in the north of Europe and glaciers. Our planet went through at least 5 major ice ages. These were exceptionally lengthy periods when the average temperature on Earth dropped. The result was the expansion of ice sheets across northern Europe and North America. The last ice age ended some 10,000 years ago. Researchers are still trying to fully understand how these glacial periods affected volcanic activity. They suspect that the sheer weight of all that ice disrupts the flow of magma underground. When glaciers retreat, the pressure is lifted. This makes it easier for lava to flow upward to the surface where it bursts. Day 1. A small but powerful tremor is shaking the city of Naples, Italy. The news networks are reporting on the event. The experts believe that Mount Vesuvius, the stratovolcano on the Gulf of Naples, will explode soon. But when? It's erupted many times in the past. In fact, that's how it got its shape. It's made of multiple layers of hardened lava, pumice, and ash. Vesuvius last erupted in 1944. But a major blast happened there nearly 2,000 years ago. It buried the Roman towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum and decimated the surrounding areas. Today, 3 million people live less than 20 miles from the volcano, and 600,000 live in the danger zone. Large eruptions happen every few thousand years, usually after long periods of calm. And the trouble is, Vesuvius is long overdue for its next one. This time, though, the volcano is being watched by the Vesuvius Observatory. It has seismic stations, special GPS arrays, and satellite-based radar to help it measure ground movement. They also have special equipment to test the chemicals found in the gases coming from the volcano. All of this helps the experts work out whether it's about to go off. But will it? Right now, the magma is more than 6 miles from the surface. Things seemed safe yesterday, but now they're about to take a turn for the worse. Day 3. Another tremor comes in measuring 3 on the Richter scale. All the equipment that's installed near the volcano is now going off. The magma is pushing upwards. It's not at the surface yet, but Vesuvius is definitely restless. 2 more tremors follow in the afternoon. They don't feel like regular earthquakes, and geologists can see the difference in their seismographs. Volcanic quakes register about 4 to 5 less on the Richter scale. Now, the experts are sure it's just a matter of days or weeks until the volcano erupts. Some volcanoes can be restless for months or even years before they go off. But that's not how it goes with Vesuvius. Day 4. The ground starts to crack open, as if a giant creature is trapped in the Earth's crust and is trying to desperately get out for some air. Steam escapes from the little cracks in the soil. Certain areas are hotter than others. If you went there, it would feel like you walked straight into an oven, and it would be hard to breathe. Some sheep got too close to the mountain and passed out. When the farmer found them, he almost collapsed too, not from the heat, but from the gases. Carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide are being released into the air. The entire area around the volcano smells like rotten eggs, and many of the forest animals are now staying clear. The nearby trees have been absorbing these gases from the soil for days on end now, and they're starting to turn brown. The carbon dioxide levels in the area are skyrocketing, and all the detectors are beeping constantly. Day 6. The tremors are getting more frequent, Experts at the Vesuvius Observatory monitoring the volcano say the quakes are coming from the magma that's being pushed upwards. A few hours later, the national emergency alert goes out. Thousands of local people have around 15 days before the volcano erupts, and they need to evacuate their homes. The 600,000 people in the danger zone start to pack their suitcases and leave in cars and trucks. There's chaos everywhere. But in all that disorder, some people are standing still. They look around, trying to understand what's really going on. A few of them are taking photos of their homes. Others are streaming all the confusion on social media. But the senior citizens are just standing outside, looking at their houses one last time. They hope this is all just a false alarm. It's happened before, but who really knows? Day 7. It was a sleepless night. Plenty of the locals have already left. Some good people from other towns drive to the area to help the residents evacuate faster. There's a massive traffic jam, but everyone expected it. This is why the evacuation started early. Ferries, trains, and buses have canceled their services to help the evacuees. They're all working on a tight schedule to make sure everyone gets out safe without any delays. Some people refuse to leave, but their neighbors eventually convince them to go. It will take 7 days to evacuate everyone, and these people will spread out to other areas of the country, not just to the nearby safe regions. Day 10. More than half of the residents have now left the red zone. After the chaos, there's now silence, and it's interrupted by the eerie sounds of the tremors. Animals are being evacuated too. Many people are now trying to save as many animals from the forest as they can find. Day 16. All 25 of the towns that were at risk have now been evacuated. The red zone is empty. But the tremors are getting stronger, as the volcano is a pressure cooker ready to explode. White smoke rises from the large opening on the mountaintop and the vents on the side. The molten rock moves toward the surface, and the pressurized gases form bubbles, just like the ones you see when you boil food. Suddenly, there are some loud booms, and then an explosion. It's loud enough to be heard thousands of miles away, and the shockwave is felt throughout Italy. Volcanic rock is thrown up into the air. A thick black mushroom cloud forms and expands into the sky. The birds abandon their nests and fly away in huge flocks. The red-hot lava is now spewing out of the volcano like a fountain. As it flows downward, it obliterates everything in its path. Then there's a volcanic landslide. Part of the cone-shaped mountain falls off, and millions of tons of soil and rock break loose from the volcano's side and tumble down. The lava spreads on the slopes, and it slowly slides down into the forest and the farmlands. The plume of ash, pumice, and other kinds of rock has risen so high into the sky that people can see it from Rome. Then the tower of debris starts falling back to Earth. First comes the ash, then chunks of rock. The ash in the atmosphere is so dense that it's hard to breathe. The lava slowly spreads across the area and pulls down all the trees. All the nearby towns are shrouded in darkness and smoke. Buildings collapse, and all around there's a mixture of heated, poisonous gas and rock moving faster than a car. Other rocks and more volcanic ash fall miles away from the volcano, hitting cars and destroying roofs. The sky is completely black as the lava keeps on coming. Slowly, all the nearby towns are submerged beneath the molten rock. Some of the lava even reaches the sea. Gigantic white steam covers the shore where it falls in, and the magma turns black. Now, a weird neon blue fire appears on the slopes of Vesuvius. This is caused by burning sulfuric gases. They're escaping at high pressure from the cracks in the volcano surface. When they come into contact with the air, they ignite. These blue flames can reach 16 feet into the air. Now, all nearby flights are canceled, and many planes have to change course to reach their destination. Ever since the national alert, no planes have been allowed to fly over the volcano. The clouds of volcanic ash can damage jet engines and other plane components. The water supply is now contaminated by streams of volcanic ash, and it smells unbelievably bad. In just a short amount of time, all that magma has made entire towns vanish. Only the roofs of taller buildings can be seen. After the big and explosive eruption, there are some smaller and quieter ones. At this stage, Nobody knows if the volcano has stopped erupting yet, and absolutely no one can go anywhere near the area. 10 years later. Most parts of the red zone are now hidden under hardened but still warm lava, including the ancient site of Pompeii. Some people have started to forget about what happened. Others have begun their new lives elsewhere, and some don't even want to think about what happened to their old homes. But several of them are counting the days until they can go back. 100 years later. You're walking in what appears to be a wasteland of volcanic ash. You suddenly realize that you're standing on top of your great-grandparents' town. Everything is now submerged under a thick carpet of solidified lava. But below it all, just about everything is still intact, completely frozen in time. Hey, we landed on the moon. We sailed around the world. Romeo met Juliet. Hey, it's hard to imagine that there are creatures out there who saw it all happen. Immortal animals. Well, almost. Glass sponges are weird little creatures that sit in one place for thousands of years. From their favorite spot under the sea, they witnessed the first Europeans crossing over to the Americas. They can live up to 15,000 years. And what's even cooler is that they can control their aging process, speed it up or slow it down. They have a glass-like exoskeleton for protection. Lobsters can grow back a limb if they lose it, and they're basically immortal. They produce an unlimited number of enzymes that keeps their DNA young forever, and they just keep on growing. That means they outgrow their own shells. They have to shed their exoskeleton every now and then and upgrade to a bigger one. The largest lobster ever caught was 44 pounds off the coast of Nova Scotia. Scientists think this large lobster was around 100 years old. It was around when Edison invented the phonograph. This next creature is a mix between a jellyfish and a tree branch. Each end of the hydra has a ringed foot, and it spends its days chilling by lakes and rivers. Its tentacles grab onto tasty snacks that swim past it. So, what's the secret to its immortality? That's something everyone wants to know. The hydra has the ability to renew its stem cells. Scientists have been trying to do that for years. They can actually slow down their aging process. Now, these little sea creatures are red sea urchins. They sit on seaweed in shallow waters and are immortal. Well, we haven't been studying them long enough to know for sure. But scientists say they only grow in size, not in age. What? Well, they sort of stay like little baby urchins, but grow in size. Adult, baby urchin, okay. These little babies can reach around 100 years old, even 200. The slowest on the list? The giant tortoise. It can reach 200 years old. And one of the oldest is Jonathan. He's technically the oldest crawling land animal. He was born in 1832 and lives it up on a remote island called St. Helena. Jonathan's been through a lot. He's seen the very first American skyscraper, the Eiffel Tower. Oh yeah, he's also lived through every single World Series, starting when he was 71 years old. Now he can't see too well and he's lost his sense of smell, but he's still going strong. Back to the oceans and the Greenland shark. It's been known to be the longest living vertebrate and can live more than 400 years. Swimming around for that long in the deep, dark, cold ocean means these sharks are tough. They're able to withstand insane water pressure. Sharks are one of the only creatures today that haven't been affected too much by evolution. Many sharks have been around since the dinosaurs and haven't changed much. Scientists found out that they grow around a half an inch per year. So, with a little bit of quick math, they can easily find out the age of these tough sharks. Imagine seeing a shark that's older than the USA. This next creature is probably the most durable, indestructible, and cutest on the list. It's called a tardigrade, but scientists nickname it water bear because I guess it looks like one. But it's not exactly bear size. It has 8 legs and hands with a strange little nose. And these bizarre microscopic creatures are indestructible. They're known to live in the most extreme places on the planet. They're fine with temperatures as high as 300 and as low as minus 330. Volcanoes, frozen desert nights, they can even handle radiation and massive amounts of pressure in the deepest parts of the ocean. They can even survive the vacuum in space. No tiny little spacesuit or anything. That would be cute enough. So far, they've survived 10 days on the outside of a spaceship, but they could probably do longer. Tardigrades might be able to outlive humans if there's some sort of worldwide catastrophe. Microscopic organisms in charge of the planet. Wonder what that would look like. Whether it's all the volcanoes erupting at once, or another ice age, or even another pesky asteroid. Tardigrades probably wouldn't even notice. Scientists are studying them to see if they can help us with some next-level biotech. Now, just for fun, here's the mayfly. This poor little insect doesn't even make it past 24 hours on average. Females and males can make it to a whopping 2 days old. Talk about living in the moment. These little flies grow in swarms and are known to have one of the shortest lifespans of any creature. But as a species, well, they've been around for hundreds of millions of years. Jellyfish have discovered the fountain of youth, and surprise, surprise, it's been inside them all along. Not inspirational poster style, but literally, it's always been inside them. Jellyfish are able to reverse their aging process whenever they want. Imagine you're swimming along and then you think to yourself, gee, I kinda want to be 8 again. And poof, there you are. Who wouldn't want to go back to being 8? That's how jellyfish stay young and live stress-free. These brainless and boneless creatures can turn the clock back anytime they want, as long as no one bothers them. They're super chill, just floating in whatever direction the current takes them. Like, go with the flow? This creature looks like something right out of a sci-fi movie, and you could say it has sort of alien features. The giant weta outweighs a mouse and is considered one of the biggest insects out there. You find these big bugs in New Zealand. While jellyfish can reverse their aging process, some members of the weta family can come back to life. Talk about superpowers. If they get completely frozen, they start to make special proteins that stop their organs from getting ruined. After whatever amount of time they're frozen, they can be thawed out and brought back to life, like nothing ever happened. In fact, the giant weta has ears on its knees in its front legs. And because it can resurrect, it's also called the zombie bug. Planaria are flatworms that are unique. Apart from being practically immortal, they're the ultimate regeneration machines for lost body parts. If you take one of them and divide its body into 10 parts, you'll end up with 10 new planaria. You keep dividing them up, they'll keep multiplying, even though they're usually less than an inch long. Imagine if we could figure out how to do that. Would that be a way for us to live forever? Or would we end up with a totally crazy world with copies of everyone walking around? How about the world's fastest relay team, 4 identical Usain Bolts? Now, clams have been around for a really long time. Scientists have discovered that they can live up to 400 years old. These little shelled creatures are the ones that create those shiny little pearls everyone loves. A clam will go into action mode when a parasite gets inside. The clam tries to cover the parasite with a bunch of special chemicals, the same ones it uses to make the inside of its shell. That's when the magic starts to happen. When these chemicals harden up, they make a shiny, glossy pearl. The more chemicals, the bigger the pearl. Now, this long, slippery-looking creature lives deep in the caves of Europe. Olm can live up to be 100 years old. It spends its days hunting for little insects, snails, and crabs with its tiny front arms and wriggling snake-like body. Its skin is so pale that some locals even call it the human fish. Hey, wait a minute. The olm is almost blind, but it can still detect light. It just mostly does it through its skin. Like other blind animals, it has a supercharged sense of hearing and smell. It gets its distinct look from those little red gills around its neck.